What are we waiting for?
We scoping the place out, man. We ain't gonna just run up in there. That's how you get shot.
Say that again. You wow. Ooh. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely
Man, you
not.
don't know nothing about no war.
Everybody knows war. Ooh. Yeah. What it is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Good God, you all.
It ain't you all, it's y'all.
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 Man, you sound like a karate movie. Y'all.
Y'all.
Say it from right here with some soul. Y'all.
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 Let me show your goofy ass how to do this. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Come on, come on.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreak.
Giants fans, what is going on? Welcome to another episode of Rush Hour. Nikki, we are back in studio, and this is a double header for us. We got tonight, we got tomorrow night, because you're going to be a special guest on the draft show.
I know. Is everybody excited? Double dose of Nicky Nick, Pebbles, and Spartan Mush, right? I mean,
absolutely. Double dose of Spartan Mush. Can't get enough.
I'm excited for that. We didn't get your t-shirts yet, did we?
No, we didn't order the t-shirts yet. They're coming in. They're coming in hot. Be the first to order them, people. I would greatly appreciate it if my false nickname gets circulated on t-shirts. So thank you all tuning in tonight. I just want to go through. We got Peter in the audience. Peter, what is happening? Damien, of course, always good to have, man. Part of Rush.
Yeah.
Darius Smith, what's going on? And Peter. Well, I already got to you, Peter, but welcome on in. Nick, we got a pretty exciting night ahead of us, don't we?
We have a very exciting night, but before we get to why this night is so exciting, we'll tell you why I'm so excited this week. And yes, I'm going to brag about it because guess who won the Rush Hour bracket? Yours truly. And you guys keep DMing me, asking me, Nikki, how long are you going to talk about you won, this bracket? And obviously some of you don't know me that well. Till next year, okay? You guys can ask Damien how much I will brag if I win. So next year, make sure you guys all jump in the Rush Hour March Madness bracket. Try to take me down. I did not intend to win this, actually, because we were going to give a prize out, but what am I going to do? Win
Nikki,
my own prize?
So the winning move, you must have been the only person to take UConn to win it all.
Correct.
What made you say, I am going with the University of Connecticut?
I would really love to sit up here and say that I did a ton of research and I really know what I'm talking about, but I did it quickly at a work event after I had a couple drinks. So
So I guess the question is, what drinks did you have that night? Because if that's the thought process that people need to pick, 4 seeds to win the entire tournament, I think you found the secret solution.
Yeah, it's Tito's Club and extra limes. So if next year maybe that's your drink of choice to win this bracket. So yes, I will take the crown though. Thank you, Darius.
Oh, yeah.
Queen
Well,
Rush.
congratulations, Nikki. Of course, if you said right there that you had this giant Excel model, you ran a bunch of analytics to determine UConn, we probably could have gotten a lot of paid subscribers from this. But
True.
We'll save that for another year.
I know. You know what? Yes, I did. I had a spreadsheet. I
yes.
I take credit for that. Then I have to deliver every year. No, but we had fun. So make sure you guys stay tuned for next year. But let's get to our special guest in the spirit of draft is coming up. So that means fantasy rankings are out. We've got fantasy baseball going on. We've got best bets. And I want you guys to all be prepared for the 3 New York Giants Rush fantasy leagues that we are doing this year, hosted by Rush Hour. So we're going to have an all-girls league. We're going to have a regular league and we're going to have a paid league. So we're each going to run it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So with that in mind, let's bring in our very, very special guest, Frank Ammirante. Come on in, join us on Rush Hour. What's up? How are you? You guys know Frank. He's got like 1 billion followers over there on Twitter. He is the senior sports writer for the Game Day. He is a member of Fantasy Sports Writers Association, the Internet Baseball Writers Association of America, and host of the Fantasy Jones podcast. And I thought I did a lot, but Frank, welcome in. Did I leave anything out or did I get it?
No, you did great. You did great. And thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate coming on and look forward to talking fantasy football. You know, we're right in baseball season. I've been just immersed in looking at which bets I like each day. I like fantasy baseball as well. But, you know, looking forward to have this conversation today.
Yeah, no. And we got Frank for, he's going to hang for the whole hour. So make sure you guys bring all your fantasy questions, all your betting questions, your fantasy baseball, everything. Listen, there's no stupid questions. I get this all the time, especially women. They'll come to me and say, oh, I'm the only woman in an all male league and I feel stupid asking questions. I think if you don't ask, that's stupid, right? So ask the questions. We have the experts here. So Frank, tell our audience, if they're not familiar with you and your work, one, where they can find you, and two, how did you get into this?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Ammirante TFJ. I'm always posting content there, pretty active, you know, interacting with followers, with other creators. And right now I write full-time with the Game Day. So how I started was basically through this Twitter account, consistently firing out, you know, my opinions. I would make sure it's backed with data. Here and there, I would be bold to incite conversation, but every bold take was something I believed. It wasn't like something totally outlandish, just feeding for engagement. It always sort of made sense. And from there, I started writing with different websites, freelancing with, say, 3 at a time. And then I was fortunate to be brought on by the Game Day for this full-time position where I'm writing football, baseball, even college basketball content, and just really enjoying myself and continuing to grow.
So see, everybody, we do have somebody on the show who uses spreadsheets and does not just drink to make their college basketball bracket predictions. So Frank, were you in a March Madness bracket?
Yeah, so as you were talking, so I'm in this big pool. I took 3 entries. There's like 600 in total in the pool. And the way it works is you get more points for a correct pick later in the tournament. And one of my teams, I had UConn like you did. Unfortunately, my final 4 choices weren't good enough. Didn't get enough points. I finished 12th out of like 600-ish, out of the money. It sucks picking the correct winner and not getting compensated for that. But hey, what are you going to do?
I almost didn't know that could happen now. How far did you have Michigan State? Asking for a friend.
Oh.
I didn't put them far enough. I think round of 32 max. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, Frank, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I'm going to have to boot you from
Yeah.
there after that
By the way,
comment.
for the friend is for Spartan, because that's okay. I have personal fantasy advice I'm going to ask later because, you know, I too, I may be the Queen Rush, but I too get tripped up. So Frank, do you cover just fantasy football and baseball, or you do all of it?
Well, just football and baseball, but I do play basketball and hockey, just not nearly as many leagues as I do with football and baseball. So I'm you know, relatively well versed in those 2 sports, but baseball and football specialty.
Okay.
Spartan, do you play fantasy baseball?
I don't play fantasy baseball. One year, me and my dad did it together, and he's like, here, I think it's like 2010, and we would have gotten Jeter up next. Oh, I'm sorry, no, we would have I think it would have been Albert Pujols actually. And he's like, here, you want to do something Sunday? Go ahead and click the draft. I accidentally selected the wrong player. That was like way down the list and completely blew the opportunity. So that was my experience playing fantasy baseball. And that was 13 years ago. The team did okay. The team did do all right. But yeah, that was the extent of it. I never got invited back.
That was it. You retired after that.
Yeah,
that
Pops ran solo after that one.
Yeah, it could be a grind. You know, it's a long season, 162 games. It's a challenge. I would definitely say out of the fantasy sports, baseball is the most challenging.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't play, and I can't, because I can't keep up with it every day, and I can't play. Same with fantasy basketball. You know, it's hard enough for me to do a weekly lineup, right? So to have to manage it every day. But this actually segues into our new segment that we're doing on Rush Hour. It's called the WTF tweet. And I wanted to save it because it is baseball related. So this tweet can be WTF for any reason that, I deem necessary, or whoever my co-host is for the evening. But there's this tweet by at PLTNO Power, and he says, how old were you when the Yankees won the World Series in 2009? And I'm WTFing it because I didn't realize how old I was. Like, I was 24. Ugh.
I,
How old were you guys?
I was
Spartan, you were like
20.
12. You were
I
20?
was 13.
I was 20
Spartan, you were
when they won
13.
last.
Do you guys
I
hear
was
this? He was
13.
13. It's
Seventh
ridiculous.
grade.
Seventh
Yeah,
grade.
time flies. It's crazy.
Can you believe
know.
that? That's
And
such a
it's
long
like an
time.
embarrassment. It's the funny thing for the Yankees. It's like an embarrassment when we go 13 years without winning a World Series. Like this is like for most teams. I mean, it's been like 11 years since the Giants won a Super Bowl. I'm not really that strung up on it. I do want to get back there, but like I'm not killing myself. But like when the Yankees go like 13 years without a World Series, man, it's like what the. This is way too damn long. It feels like it's been a century because we're used to winning one pretty repetitively here.
Yeah, it's true. Especially, I think I think part of that is because, of course, the Yankees such a prestigious franchise, but also with there not being a salary cap in MLB and the Yankees consistently having one of the higher payrolls, it feels like it hurts more that you haven't won, even in, like you said, 13 years. So I totally get that for sure.
Yeah, these droughts. So Frank, who are your teams before we jump into the world of fantasy? Let's tell the people who your teams are.
All right, so football. I'm one of your division rivals, the Giants fans. I've gotten into it a few times on Twitter, like stirring the pot. A lot of Giants fans there with that. We could talk about that after. But I'm a Washington Commanders fan. They've disappointed me in recent years. I don't like the direction they're going, really. Baseball, Blue Jays. Basketball, Raptors. Hockey, Red Wings. I was born and raised in Toronto, so couple Toronto teams there. Other than I'm not a Leafs fan.
Still in Toronto.
Well, I moved away a couple hours in a city called London, Ontario.
For sure.
It's 2 hours away, but still go there quite often to Toronto.
Gotcha.
All right. So what were you stirring the pot about?
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah,
so
tell us, Frank.
sometimes my tweets, like I'll be really blunt, and it's my opinion. The way it's worded, it could kind of set off some hardcore fans. So it was going into not this season, the previous season, and I just did not like Joe Judge. I was not optimistic on the Giants season. And I just kind of said that he's going to be fired by the end of the year. This team is, I don't remember the strong wording, but it was like strong wording. And the Giants fans came at me in droves. It was a fun time. Like, it could get over the top sometimes, but hey, it's just fun banter on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. But the Commanders fans aren't too bad. The Eagles fans are the worst for me,
Yeah, it goes Eagles, Cowboys, and I mean Washington's not even close. They're not even the same. I went to a Giants Commanders game in 2019, the Chase Young Bowl. Had a great time there. Me and my dad did. It was fantastic atmosphere. Stadium's a little bit dated, but I've never had a problem with the Commanders fan. I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's a rivalry.
Yeah, it's definitely not as much as with the Cowboys and Eagles, like you said. Right. But hey, to be fair, I have gone to Philly a couple times, and honestly, I didn't have much of an issue. But I guess because my one of my good friends who I go with is a big Eagles fan, and we just go to the tailgate and we have fun, and But hey, I definitely see what you're saying with the the Eagles fans could get.
Nicky, Nicky, you weren't so lucky there, right? I mean, we had full disclosure. We had a conversation with Paul Dottino before we went live for about 15 minutes about how awful the experience is at the Eagles games with Craig and Nicky. You have one personal, right? I mean, didn't somebody berate the car or something?
And throwing beer bottles at us.
Beer bottles.
Yeah, so they're just and they're not really nice on Twitter either.
No.
I had stirred it up and I had said that when they were eating horse poop, right, for the Super Bowl, and which was true, and they did, and everybody came at me and they were like, "You're a liar! You don't know what you're talking about." It's like Google is your friend, people. Google is your friend. Try it because it's the first thing that comes up. So. But we did have a couple Eagles fans on our panel on Rush Hour, and we did get along for that hour. Yeah. We can all agree that we hate the Cowboys, so we got along with
Absolutely.
that. Yes. So we do have a question. We have a bunch of questions. Commanders, are they going to sell, Frank? They want to know what you think about that.
So he could mean one of two things. He could mean sell, like as in sell off their assets, trade away their marquee players to get picks. But I think he means they're going to sell, as in they're going to play. They're going to have a bad season, or does he mean the ownership's going to sell? So that could be three things. Well, I could answer all three.
Jay, you got to clarify for us.
I'm not. I'm not happy with the direction of the team. I want them to go after Lamar Jackson. I think, given all that investment in the defensive line with Chase Young and Montez Sweat, you're wasting years of them. You can't keep all of them and re-sign all of them. It's just not really feasible with the salary cap. So you can't waste these years on Carson Wentz and now on Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett. I'd rather them make a splash and go after Lamar Jackson. So I'm not really excited about them, but ownership, that I am hopeful about, because Dan Snyder needs to go. Hopefully new ownership, refresh, like a refreshing feel around the team, and a new leaf, a new era. It just gives you some optimism. So I am excited about that for sure.
Frank, let me ask you something. There was a report that came out where the players themselves kind of rated, similar to like an HR practice, if you will. Players of each team rated, how they feel they're treated by the team, facilities, they're taken care of. Dead last was the Washington Commanders, and that kind of stuff falls on Dan Snyder. One of them being that they're the only team left that makes the players share bedrooms at hotels the night before away games. Did you hear about this, or did you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, so I vaguely heard about that, and it honestly is not that surprising, just given, Dan Snyder, hands down the worst owner in the NFL, maybe in all of the North American sports leagues. So it just, you kind of shake your head and you're like, as a Commanders fan, you're hoping for the new ownership and just a new era, like I said.
Yeah, you guys need it. I mean, he conducted his own investigation, right? Like internally, like team conducts their own investigation into their misconduct. So
it's like when Pablo Escobar built his own prison. It's like, all right, well,
Okay. Sure. But so you're on the Lamar Jackson train. You're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Like, I think, what's that rumor that everyone's sort of, the owners are colluding they didn't want to get this fully guaranteed contract type of thing. But, I really think they should try to make the trade. I don't care about giving up the picks. I think Lamar Jackson is worth it. He'd have a good pair of receivers with Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson in Washington, and he'd have a good defense behind him. I think they would immediately become, for sure, a playoff team, and maybe more in an NFC that is not as strong, given the fact that there's so many stud quarterbacks in the AFC.
Yeah, the AFC is stacked with quarterback talent. The NFC really needs to come up there. So if you're thinking Lamar, what about Lamar on any team? He is a must draft, though, right, for fantasy?
Yeah, because you got to think that this situation will be resolved by the time we're, getting into our serious drafts in August. By then, it's likely he'll end up staying with the Ravens, just because whenever it's a marquee player with this, the safest bet is that they stay with their team.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless what happens, he'll be ready week one. And hey, if he goes to a new team, there's a good chance that he'll be surrounded by a superior supporting cast in terms of receivers, running backs, tight ends. Like, hey, what if he went to Atlanta? I don't think that would happen, but Drake London, Kyle Pitts, that'd be pretty exciting. So I wouldn't be too worried about him. Although in my recent rankings, I just kept him a little lower, like quarterback 6 overall, just because you never know, right? We're just going to wait and see a little bit, but I'm hopeful by August we're good to go.
Then we're going to get into Frank's list. We're kind of going to go through the top 30. Actually, took till number 30 before we hit a quarterback on your list, right? It's the top 100 fantasy players. And Frank, where can everybody find your full article?
So you can find my full article at thegameday.com. If you want to get the quick link, it's just /fantasy/football/rankings. It's top 100 list with one quarterback league. So that's why I keep, like you said, there's none in the top 30, just because it's hard to really put in a first to third pick, like a third round pick on a quarterback, because it's really deep when you're only starting one. So that's why they're outside the top 30. Yeah.
Gotcha. Frank, how much time, effort, energy, research when you're putting into this, when you're putting out your fantasy advice and your betting advice, and you're doing this for daily fantasy and you're doing this on a weekly basis, like in general, is this just consume you, or do you have it down to a science where you can kind of get through your research and all your data pretty quickly?
Honestly, I'm pretty obsessive with it. Like my
Okay.
phone, I'm always looking at the phone, scrolling through Twitter, reading people's insights. When I'm writing the article, though, since I've always, if I'm on the phone, rather than scrolling through Instagram, looking at pictures or funny videos, I'm always reading that. I'm like, I just love sports. I'm just locked
Yeah.
into this stuff. So with that, it's already sort of, I have a high knowledge of it. So when I write the article, it doesn't take as long because I have a sense of, how players are used, who gets heavy target shares. I know the resources well. So it's just quick clicks. I know where to get the info I need. And it's not too bad with writing the articles. But in terms of overall time spent, it just, because it's such a hobby that I love, it doesn't even feel like a lot
Yeah.
of time, to be quite
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Do you ever, and I fall into this too, where, and I think maybe we all do as content creators, where you see some people out there who are just throwing information out there for clickbait, right? And you're trying to produce and create content that's credible so people can keep coming back to you. Does that annoy you? Because I get very annoyed. And we all know who's full of it. Okay. I think enough of us in this industry know who's full of it sometimes. Do you try to block that out and just do what you do best?
Well, for sure, I get a little annoyed. I understand that everyone's looking for engagement, exposure, growing their account,
Yeah.
but I think you got to do it in a way that like I said, if you're going to be bold, it should be a bold take that makes sense. It should be backed by some sort of supporting evidence. It shouldn't be just a random thought like Daniel Jones is the best quarterback in the NFC, which I know you're Giants fans. I know he had a good year, but like, come on, we know that's not true. So
Right.
you see that sometimes on Twitter, so yeah, it gets a little annoying, but just gotta keep doing my own thing. And I used to kind of chirp it a little bit, like quote tweet it and like rip on what they're saying, but I don't do that anymore. It's just
Yeah.
not a productive use of my time to do that. So
Yeah.
I just focus on myself. But I hear what you're saying. It gets like annoying.
Gets annoying. Well, especially with drafts, right, Spartan? Like, I feel like everybody's
Oh,
like, every team is going to take every position, and then somebody just wants to hit on it and be right.
Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, we go into this every year. I mean, people are getting into spats over a waste of a fourth round pick, or
Yeah.
we didn't do the right move there. It's like, guys, look, I assure you, we get to this point, we're just kind of shooting into the wind as it is. So the odds of you having some guaranteeing knowledge of like hitting on a draft pick at round 4, it's probably not there. Like I have, like, the further I've come along as a content creator, minimize the amount of like arguments I get into. Like if I say a statement and somebody tries, coming back on it. It happened today with Philip Rivers' comment. I'm just like, you know what?
Oh, I saw.
I don't have
Yeah.
time for half you guys. I just don't.
Yeah, because then if it gets to a certain point, they just keep going and going, and there's several. You just find yourself replying to these troll tweets, and it could get not only annoying, but like it sort of could maybe affect your mood a little bit. Where you're like, holy like Jesus, like you know what I'm saying? So yeah, what you're saying is kind of drown that out is definitely the best approach.
Yeah,
Totally.
I need to take my own advice, guys, because sometimes I just can't help it, and I will be like, go in on somebody, and it
Yeah,
does
I hear
sometimes
that.
it affects your mood, right? It's usually I mostly let it roll, except I hate the whole "you're a girl, you don't know what you're talking about"
Oh,
thing.
that for sure.
That really irritates me. And you guys all came to my defense, the Rush crew that you are, but that guy Bobby, you know what it is? He made my Twitter circle for this week. He's such a hater, but yet you ended up being in my Twitter circle, which I thought was hysterical. So let's talk about, what do you dislike about fantasy football?
What do I dislike about fantasy football? Well, one thing I might say is in full PPR scoring. I don't like it when you have that player just rack up meaningless check downs at the end of the game. Their
Yeah.
team is getting blown out. Usually it's like a third down running back. Maybe they racked up 7 catches for like 54 yards, and that's still 12.4 points. Whereas if a running back ran for 120 yards and no touchdown, that would be around the same production. So that's one aspect of fantasy football. I just think that
Yeah.
element of scoring is not my favorite, which is why I prefer half point per reception.
Yeah.
But that would be definitely one. Yeah.
Yeah. I personally hate week 8. I don't know why. For some reason, when I get to week 8, I historically have had the worst week ever. It's always such a wonky week for me. So I hate week 8. In terms of position though, and this is the question I want to ask you, I hate the tight end position in fantasy. It is so hard if you do not get one of those top 1, 2, 3 tight ends. What ends up happening is they either get injured or I'll just stream it, end up like after week 5, it's a position I stream, and then I really get into a jam because you can't get a good trade going. There's really nobody to pick up.
Yeah.
What is your strategy for tight end? Because it is really a position that I struggle with.
Yeah, it's definitely tough, especially last year. It was just really Kelsey who dominated. Mark Andrews started off hot. He
Yeah.
trailed off, especially with Lamar getting hurt. Kyle Pitts was a massive disappointment because of
Oh,
how
I had
extremely
Kyle
run
Pitts.
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were way too run heavy. They just didn't pass enough, and then he got hurt. So definitely tough. What I would suggest is try to target one of the top 5 tight ends, and if you don't get them, don't just wait towards the end of your draft to take a dart throw on a player. Like say last year, if you didn't get Kelsey or Andrews or Hawkinson or Kittle,
Right.
let's say you steered clear of Pitts. Let's say you didn't get those 4. You could have waited and got like Evan Ingram, who performed well on the Jags, or he would have went right at the end of the draft, maybe not even been drafted if memory serves me correctly, or even like David Njoku. But you want to stay away of the mid-tier types like Dalton Schultz last year, who just had a big year the previous season because he had a lot of volume where it's not certain that will continue year to year. You'd rather take the tight end who could get downfield and that's at a cheaper price, like Njoku and Ingram as 2 good examples. For this coming year, off the top of my head here, I think Njoku will still be pretty cheap. On the tight ends, the rookie, his name's difficult to pronounce. Okonkwo, Chig. They call him Chig. He's the tight end on the Titans.
Okay, that's what we're gonna do.
He's a good one too. Jelani Woods on the Colts. You could wait right to the end rather than
Okay.
targeting the middle if you don't get an elite one.
Okay, I like that. Okay, let me ask you, what about Darren Waller?
Oh, so yeah, I should have mentioned Darren Waller, given that we're on a Giants podcast. I love the move for him. Love the move for the Giants. He should help Daniel Jones. Waller doesn't have to compete for targets with an alpha like Devontae Adams anymore. He could lead the Giants in targets this year. So he would be one I would definitely try to pursue, as long as his price and drafts doesn't get too high. Like it would, if he gets towards the Mark Andrews range, that would be difficult for me to go with because Waller's had, consecutive sort of disappointing seasons. You got to bake in a bit of risk. He's on the wrong side of 30. So, but as long as he's like tight end 5 or later, I'm cool with taking him and like his upside.
Look, I always say this, and earlier when we were doing Rush, I would talk about my strategy. I used to absolutely suck at fantasy football. And then one year I went 0-10. I lost every single game. So it was so embarrassing. I took the next year off and did a lot of homework on like how I can improve and be better at fantasy. And they do mention the tight end issue. This is a very common problem. Like once you drop from those top guys, there's no drop off. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? It pains me to do this. I'm going to get Kelsey at my first pick. And I did that. And I have completely turned around fantasy because what happens is the drop off between the top receiver and the 15th best receiver, and then from there, the 30th best receiver, it's not that much. And there's a lot of inconsistencies from week to week with receiver anyway. But tight ends, you get outside the top 16, you're dealing with blocking tight ends. And that's a serious issue because it's like, look, they're not going to get points.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you took Kelsey last year, he gave you such a positional advantage, and then
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, if you had Kelsey your last year, you're in the top 3 in your league likely,
Yeah.
unless you got decimated with injuries.
I lost. I got to in both leagues. I got to the championship and lost. So, but again, I mean, Kelsey was
So
on my
good
team.
year. Yeah. So yeah, definitely that's a good approach too. Just go Kelsey, and if you don't get him, wait till the end.
Interesting. It's very interesting because there's something in me that's like you just can't take a tight end like right away with your first pick. But I mean, you guys are right. I usually wait till the end to take a quarterback because I feel like,
Sure.
and even last year I had a roll with Daniel Jones for a few weeks. I mean, he averaged like 20 points. I mean, it almost kind of didn't matter. Like, no, did I have Pat Mahomes? But I still did well. I guess, usually my strategy is stock up running back, wide receiver.
For sure.
Yeah, you could definitely do that. There's elite running backs and receivers. What I would recommend is if you're gonna wait on quarterback, don't take like the mid tier ones that fall. Like say if you took Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers last year, they really would have disappointed you. And because you used a mid round pick, you would have given them more of a long it would have taken longer for you to move off them, even though they were struggling, because you'd be like, this is Russell Wilson, this is Aaron Rodgers, you got to bounce back because they have that name brand. So you don't want that. If you wait till right to the end, you could have last year say got Trevor Lawrence or just picked up Justin Fields later. And because you took them so late, you'd be quick to drop and pick up another one who had a good matchup, like let's say Jared Goff at home. So if you're waiting, wait till the end.
All right, wait till the end. Spartan, when do you take your quarterback?
It's funny. I mean, I go for some of the siloed positions pretty early. I do tight end, and then I try to get running backs because the drop off there is pretty severe. If I don't get like 2 top running backs, I get a rookie. Just because it's a boom and bust potential. And then quarterback, I mean, I try to get ahead of it. The bottom line is I'm always trying to get somebody that's a dual threat quarterback that can produce on the ground and in the air. So, whether it's like a guy like Lamar Jackson, I'm always going for somebody like that just because I feel like, I mean, on a really good day, they're fantasy monsters.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yes, it's not like I never wanted Tom Brady or Peyton Manning back when, he was in fantasy. It was just too bland, too stale. And then just the boom situations weren't really there.
Exactly.
No. Yeah.
Especially those dual threats who in the offseason, they get like a big upgrade at receiver, like last year, Jalen Hurts with A.J. Brown. It could really allow them to take off. Now, I'm not saying Justin Fields is going to have that sort of ascension with DJ Moore, but obviously it bodes well that they upgraded the receiving room, so it makes you feel more secure in targeting and using a higher pick on him. So to your point, yeah, targeting dual threat quarterbacks, definitely the way to go.
I think
For sure.
Fields' fantasy stock went up with the addition of Moore. I do like it. I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves in terms of their ranking of Fields. But I do like it. I think that it will significantly improve that offense. And I think that his fantasy stock definitely went up a little bit. Let's go to your Spartan. I don't know if you have it. Do you have Frank's list that we could pull up? Or
I'm trying to pull it up. I did have it.
Okay.
But it's the presentation on this.
Not
One
great.
sec.
I have your top 30, so we can run down the top 30 while Spartan tries to get that up on the screen. We apologize if the presentation is not, great, but that's okay. All right, so I love your number 1. I wholeheartedly agree with it. So I'll run it down and then we will jump into discussion on it. So guys, this is the top 100 fantasy players. Just due to time, I'm going to go 1 through 30, read it off. But like you guys said, you can get Frank's article. We actually put the link in the comments too. So if you want to scroll up, check that out, read all 100, and then you can come at him on Twitter if you disagree. And he can stir the pot for you. So let's get to it. Number 1, my boy, who I personally had in fantasy with my other boy, Joe Burrow. So Jamar Chase, number 1. Justin Jefferson at 2, Christian McCaffrey at 3, Tyreek Hill at 4, Jonathan Taylor 5, Stephon Diggs 6, Devontae Adams at 7, Austin Eckler at 8, Travis Kelce at 9, Cooper Kupp 10, Saquon, our boy Saquon here at number 11, AJ Brown at 12, CeeDee Lamb at 13, how do you say Binjay Robinson? Is that how you say
Bijan
it?
Robinson.
Okay, yeah, I can't pronounce anything ever. You have him at 14, 15, Josh Jacobs, 16, Garrett Wilson, 17, the Sun God, and Ross St. Brown, 18, Tony Pollard, 19, Brees Hall. I think there's some people that might disagree there. 20, Travis Etienne, 21, Ramondre Stevenson, 22, Jalen Waddle, 23, Kenneth Walker, 24, Nick Chubb, 25, Derrick Henry, 26, Chris Olave, 27, Devontae Smith, 28, T. Higgins, 29, DK Metcalf, and 30. We finally get to a quarterback, guys. Jalen Hurts.
All right. I could start off with the first one because I know it's bold because consensus has Justin Jefferson at 1, and why not? He had 2 massive seasons. But for me, I always project forward. For one, Chase is just as good of a player as Jefferson is. Chase has a better quarterback with Joe Burrow. I do think Cincinnati will pass at a higher rate this season than they did last. Like we started to see down the stretch, they would just go empty backfield and just air it out with Burrow. I think that's going to continue. You look at Chase's production in an injury-plagued season, really heavy volume. He was on pace for about 180 targets. So the volume is similar with him and Jefferson. One thing I like about Chase is that he's better after the catch and he gets those shorter targets. So his average target depth is lower than Jefferson's. So that leads to more consistency week to week in fantasy. Jefferson has those blow up games, but he may have those slow ones, like say the fantasy finals, he had a down week just because a lot of times they're throwing downfield targeting him. And Chase, the last point with him is that he's a bigger threat in the red zone. He's a great bet for double-digit touchdowns. He's consistently targeted there. So those 3 factors put Chase above Jefferson for me this year. But honestly, I wouldn't argue with you if you put Jefferson ahead. This is just my personal preference, how I think this year is going to go. But I do understand it's a bit bold going there.
I don't think it's Spartan. Is it that bold to have Jamar Chase 1?
No, I don't think so. Not with the state of the Bengals right now, right? I mean, like
Yeah.
he's already established himself as a phenomenal wide receiver, right? And I don't think he's had his best year ever yet. I think
Exactly.
very possible early in his career stays relatively uninjured. And with a third-year quarterback now, or fourth, I guess Joe's going on his 4th year. No, he definitely has potential to be that number 1 guy. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, he listen, I roll with him. That's my boy, him and Joe Burrow. If I could get those as a fantasy duo, I do and I will. Everybody, well, we got a couple comments. They're saying St. Brown is too low. You want to touch on why he's number 17?
Sure. Now, I totally get why they would think St. Brown is too low. He's been great in his first 2 years. He's a target monster.
Right.
Jared Goff loves him with those underneath targets. But here's my thing. I think Jamison Williams, fully healthy now. He'll play a full season, likely, as long as he doesn't get hurt in a future game. But I think he's really good. And I think he will take away a little bit of that target share that St. Brown has. And because St. Brown is he gets shorter targets closer to the line of scrimmage, he needs more volume for him to really have that high upside of going in the top 15 or top 12 picks.
Mhm.
So I put him at 17 also because Garrett Wilson, I'm still assuming, is going to get Aaron Rodgers, and I think those two will be a perfect fit together. Wilson was held back by Zach Wilson last season, and he just was
Yeah.
phenomenal as a rookie, and I think he will really take off. So that's why I have him ahead of St. Brown. Josh Jacobs staying with Vegas really helps his value because we saw Josh McDaniels just feed him the ball and he excelled. And I think we could see that continue, especially, they have Jimmy Garoppolo. He's not going to be airing it out at a high rate. They'll still run the ball and be a balanced offense. So I kept him there. And I'll just touch one more on who I have ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Mhm.
Bijan Robinson, total package, running back prospect, the best one since Saquon Barkley, even before we know where he's going to land. Wherever he lands, he's going to be the feature back. He could make an impact in the passing game. Dynasty rankings, people are putting him as the first overall running back already without him playing a snap. So that just speaks to how highly thought of he is. So that's why I also have him. but I get why people love St. Brown, and I understand why they would think he's a bit low here, but that's just my 2 cents.
Got it. And we did have that question about Robinson. Would he be worth a first round pick?
He'd be right on the cusp for me.
Okay.
If it's like like I don't think the Eagles will take him because traditionally Howie Roseman doesn't invest high draft capital in running backs. He likes to build the trenches. I love Rashad Penny as a really cheap signing that could thrive in behind their elite offensive line. So I don't think they would take him, but if they did, like that's an amazing landing spot. He'd jump up to the top 10 for me. So it really depends where he lands. If it's like, honestly, I probably wouldn't put him lower than this 14. He could only go up. So
Okay.
if the landing spot isn't something I love, like let's say, I don't know, off the top of my head, let's say the Commanders, my own team. It's not like an amazing landing spot because they'd have Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell. Their offense isn't that great. So I
Right.
would probably keep him at 14. But if he went to, like, say, the Eagles, I'd put him to 10. So that's pretty much how I'm viewing him.
Okay. One question from Joe. He wants to know your thoughts on Rashad White. He should be the number one running back in Tampa this year. He wants to know. What do you think?
Yeah, so all the reports are saying they want to use him as a like a 3-down back, and
Okay.
he's shown the ability to make an impact in the passing game, which is what you want in your fantasy running back. We want running backs who get targets. My only concern is that I know they're saying all this, but I want to wait till after the draft before I really bump them up the rankings because teams say this quite often, and then they end up drafting a running back in the second or third round, and that adds competition and could take away touches. So that's why I'm a little bit conservative on my ranking of White. But if they don't really add a viable threat, like if they don't use a second to third round or even first round pick, White will move up these rankings absolutely.
Where do you have White currently?
I gotta
We-
double check that.
It's not your
Not
top.
that high
Okay,
right
not that
now.
high.
I'm looking at my list here on my phone. Okay, I have him 81, which is running back 26, which
Okay.
is really conservative. Just speaking to the fact that I'm still a little worried that they will draft someone because if you look at that depth chart, it's really just Rashad White and I believe Keyshawn Vaughn, that's really thin. They're likely to add some sort of depth. So we need to see what type of depth it is. If it's a high draft pick in the second round or third round, that's a little concerning. But if it's just some veteran like the Patriots added with James Robinson, who didn't really look great last year, that doesn't concern me as much. So we'll have to see.
Okay. Spartan, he's got Jonathan Taylor ahead of Saquon Barkley.
Yeah,
You
what's
agree
giving you
with
the
that?
confidence in Jonathan Taylor for that? I mean, and listen, I mean, as you said, all sports fans are biased, but I mean, even most fans could probably assume that Saquon's a better running back than Jonathan Taylor. So, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, good question. Love Saquon, was heavily into him last year. He was too cheap in fantasy drafts. Still like him this year. I think it was best for him staying with the Giants, where he's just the focal point of the offense, not really competing for touches with anyone. But to sum it up, Taylor has that running back one season under his belt. He's 1 year removed from it. Last year, he dealt with injuries, which obviously suppressed his production. But the main reason is I really think they're going to draft Anthony Richardson, who is just a major threat on the ground. And if he's playing games, that's going to open up. If he's starting, that would open up running lanes for Taylor. And we see how elite of a runner he could be 2 years ago. So
Right.
I'm bullish on him for that reason. And then if it's Gardner Minshew starting, he's more of a pocket passer, but that could help Taylor with some checkdowns reception. So we'll have to see who they draft, but I'm assuming it's going to be Anthony Richardson, and that would really help him on the ground.
All right.
Scroll
I
down
mean,
here.
respectfully disagree on that one, but I feel you. No. I get it. Cold is saying he could see Fields being poised to break out this year. I know we didn't go further than the top 30, but Frank, where do you have Fields ranked right now? Is he in?
Let me scroll. Okay, he's 35 right now. I
Okay.
have him quarterback 4.
Okay.
That's because I like our listener was saying he could be poised for a career year just because of what we saw down the stretch. He was so prolific on the ground. They add a a stud in DJ Moore. They got a lot of draft picks. You got to think they're going to bolster that offensive line, which will help him.
Yeah.
And I know he didn't pass much at all last year. I think part of that was because he's still erratic as a passer, but also part of that is because their receiving core wasn't good at all. Now they have a full year with DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool. Remember, Mooney missed time last year too.
Yes.
So I think just for that upgrade, they will pass it a little more than they did last year, which could help Justin Fields be a little more consistent. So I do share his sentiments that we could see like a real nice year from him.
All right. T. Higgins. Why is he number 28? We have a couple people want to know that.
Okay, good question. So at number 28, still have him receiver 14, still like close to, the top 12. But my love for Jamar Chase would mean that instead of it being like a 1A, 1B situation, I'm thinking it's going to be more defined hierarchy there, where it's Chase as the
Okay.
1 and Higgins as the 2. If we look at down the stretch, their target share, Chase was, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he had a much larger target share than T. Higgins did. I think Chase was like 29% and Higgins is more like 24%. That 5% is a big difference. But yeah, T. Higgins is a stud. It's a great situation. I just prefer Chris Olave having more stability at quarterback with Derek Carr.
Yeah.
And Devontae Smith and Higgins are just neck and neck for me. It could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the hard thing about fantasy. So I had Smith, right? And, I obviously don't want the Eagles to win, but I need to have, a good fantasy week. And it's so hard to say like, oh, I'm not going to draft any Eagles or any Cowboys players. Earlier when we talked about what you hate most about fantasy, that's probably it. Having to draft, a rival team of the team that you root for, and then wanting we want the Giants to win, but then it's like, I need Devontae Smith to have a good week. I really still, I've been playing fantasy forever. I still struggle with that.
Final score 68, 58
Yeah.
Giants. They win, but Adams gets 5 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it just that never works. That never works out. Frank, do you still struggle with that?
Not as much as when I was not writing fantasy content, just because now I'm in a bunch of leagues, so I have like different players on different teams. So it was different than when I was just in one league and I like more into that one team and cheering it on. But I do get what you're saying. It's tough, big division game. You don't want to be cheering for the opponent, and so I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
good to try to just watch the game as if just ignoring fantasy if it's against your team, and then just checking that score later on. I know
Yeah.
it's challenging. It's easier
Hard.
said than done, but that would be the best way.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on what they're doing down in Carolina in terms of fantasy?
Well, they gave up so much for the first overall pick. Like it was the treasure trove of picks, a great receiver in DJ Moore. But hey, at least, they liked the top quarterback, whether it's Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and they went hard to get him. I like that better than, say, the Falcons saying, we're cool with Desmond Ridder. Like,
Yeah.
I like that aggression to try to get your new franchise quarterback. So I'm a fan of that move, even though it costs a lot, because, they didn't bring in their new rookie with a barren receiving core, like with just Terrace Marshall there. They went and they signed DJ Chark and Adam Thielen, who neither of them are number ones, but
Right.
at least they're dependable. They have 1,000-yard seasons under their belt. They could help the incoming rookie and give him more of an easy transition. Even adding Miles Sanders was a good move. Just, getting another proven player there who could help ease the load through the running game. So I'm a fan of what they're doing for sure. And then, hey, Frank Reich, I know he struggled this past year, but I don't know. I feel like it was, Jim Irsay. I don't know. That team felt off this year. Like he brings in Jeff Saturday. It probably was. I'm going to give Reich a mulligan for that coaching year. I think he's done good things in the past in previous seasons. So I think, he's good with quarterbacks. I like what they're doing in Carolina.
Yeah, I do too. Spartan, anything else jump out to you on this list before we move on?
No, the only thing that came to my attention that I was a little surprised by was was Hurts, and I know we kind of touched on it already. Look, I just feel like Patrick Mahomes would undoubtedly be the number one guy no matter what. I mean, he's got good talent surrounding him, and he consistently dominates in air and on the ground. Hurts is a very talented quarterback, and he had a great year last year. I just don't know if he's going to consistently be able to get it done.
Yeah, the top three really could be interchangeable. It could be
Yeah.
Allen one, could be Mahomes one.
Sure.
I put Hurts just because of that elite rushing production. I'm the supporting cast is amazing, great receivers. They love to run them in the red zone. Like, what do you have? Double-digit rushing touchdowns. So I'm a little bit willing to go with Hurts there because Mahomes is obviously amazing. He's the best quarterback in the league, but he doesn't run as much as Hurts or Allen, so he needs to keep maintaining that just ridiculous passing production, which he could. It's just that I'm a little bit feel a bit more comfortable with Hurts at one.
Interesting.
Wow.
You do
Okay.
make a good point that you probably can trade all three of those out and swap 1, 2, and
Yeah.
3. On any given list here. Calvin
Well-
Ridley. They said that he should have. What did Jay say? He should have fire in his belly. What do you think about Calvin Ridley this year?
I like him because, Maiden Focus is saying, he's hyped up. He's
Yeah.
highly motivated. He's joining an ascending team that surprised many by winning the division. Trevor Lawrence looks like a franchise quarterback. They got pieces all over that offense. Ridley has turned in an elite fantasy season in the past. I think that he's the best bet out of that receiving core, and they will pass at a high rate given their personnel. So I'm really excited about what he can do. I know some are worried because he hasn't played in a while. Could see some rust like we saw with Deshaun Watson last year, but
Yeah, which I said was going to happen, and people were like, "No, he's not going to be rusty." And I'm like,
yeah.
hey, he's going to be a little bit rusty. Yeah.
I get those concerns, but it really is going to depend where he goes in the draft. But I'm cool with putting him I got him receiver 17, which is a little higher than where he goes. I think he goes like 19 right now. If you go on underdog best ball, like 19th receiver, that is. But I just love the fit with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags.
Real quick, you only have 2 Giants on this list. You don't think that any of the wide receivers are going to break out for the Giants this year?
Sparks taking exception.
I like what Isaiah Hodgins was doing down the stretch. I didn't put any because I also want to see what they do in the draft. Maybe if they draft a rookie receiver, just see what the depth chart looks like going into the season. But for me, the best pass catcher, like the one I would be most interested would be Darren Waller at this time, but we'll have to see.
Frank's like, what wide receiver, Spartan?
What's that?
He's like, what wide receivers are you referring to over there?
Which is understandable because I don't really have much faith right now as it is either. We've had a little bit of talent, but I mean, we haven't really gotten that true number 1 guy. Let me ask you this though, because obviously NA, these are all rookies. So I mean, which rookie do you think has the best chance to take off next year?
Well, for sure, Bijan Robinson would be at the top of the list just because, like I said, he's such a highly talented running back prospect.
Yeah.
So we'll kind of remove him from this list. It's going to be between Jahmyr Gibbs, who's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. That's a really fantasy-friendly skill set because we want running backs that could catch passes. So depending where he lands, he could be really exciting. And then Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think is going to be he's the top receiver in this class. I think he can make an immediate impact. It may not be right away. That's with rookie receivers, you want to target them for your teams, even if it's some on your bench, because as the season goes along and they find their footing and they get going, they could really help out your team. Look at Garrett Wilson at times last year, Chris Olave. Previous year, Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't do much at the beginning of the year. Then he just popped off down the stretch. So it's a great idea to really prioritize those rookie receivers later in the draft.
Yeah, I did that with Chris Olave last year. And it was like, I think it took about till week 7. And then I said, like, these are the guys, it's okay to grab these rookies because injuries are going to happen, right? And eventually they're going to start asserting themselves in the offense. And then, come down the stretch, you're probably going to be happy that you have them. So I'm with you. I think, you do need to look into some of these rookies and do your fantasy research. Just to wrap up fantasy and this wonderful show that it's been, Frank, any player in particular or 2, 3 that you are just so hyped on for fantasy this year that you think is going to have a monster season?
Well, for one, I mentioned him already, but it's definitely Garrett Wilson just because of
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers coming there. It's a huge upgrade. Another one, Drake London is one I didn't mention.
Okay.
I'm definitely excited about him because even though the production wasn't there in terms of fantasy points fully, he
Hmm.
still had an elite target share. And when we see receivers earn a high percentage of targets on their team, it's really bodes well for their future outlook. Like if you look in the past, like I think his was like 27%, and previous rookies who had done the same, they all, if you look at the list, they're all really good pros. So all he needs is the Falcons to pass it more. Like when they had Mariota,
Yeah.
they were attempting like honestly like 20 passes per game. That's like 1950s football. But then at least when Desmond Ritter came in, it wasn't like they were going nuts airing it out, but he was still like at the 25 per game or 26. So that's still 6 more attempts per game. That would lead to more consistency for London, he looks like a future number 1 receiver. I think he
Yeah.
could break out immediately this year. And if we're going to pick one more looking at this
Yeah.
list, I'm trying to think because a lot of them I did, like my big favorites were like Chase, Fields, Taylor.
Right.
I'm going to try to pick one here. This is a tough question. We said Ridley. Let me think. Just one moment. I'm trying to think of a good
Yeah.
one. You know what? I'll touch on David Montgomery.
Okay.
Great landing spot in Detroit. Terrific offensive line. They're going to score a ton of points. We saw how many red zone carries Jamal Williams got in leading the league in touchdowns. I know they have DeAndre Swift there, but it's clear to me that they don't want Swift to be that, 3-down back. It's going to be a similar situation that what we saw last year where they have their, specialized roles where Swift is getting those targets and Montgomery gets early downs, gets red zone carries. But the thing is, Montgomery is a decent receiver too, so he can eat into that production from Swift. So while I do rank him not that high, I might have to bump that up because we could see double-digit touchdowns and just a really solid season from him on a Lions offense that should be great. And I notice we have a little typo there that I got to fix: Chicago and put Detroit next to Montgomery.
Ooh, fix the typo. Well, I do appreciate Jay in the chat, Made him focus in the or Darius. Some of you guys have never played fantasy football, but you're here on the fantasy show. So I mean, we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And maybe you guys want to play in the Rush Hour League this year. That is something that we will be doing. Again, we're gonna have an all-girls league. We're gonna have a paid league, and then we're just going to have your standard regular league. We're going to welcome first timers or anybody who hasn't played in a minute and you kind of want to get back into it. So we hope that you guys will join us. Frank, thank you so very much. I hope that we can get you back on as we get closer to the fantasy drafts, as they get started. Real quick, before we let you go, do you like having your fantasy draft in September? Are you one of these like crazy early August people? What do you like? I'm like, I want to wait. Let me wait almost to the last minute.
Because I'm one of those nuts that just play like a lot of leagues.
Okay.
I'm not like someone who's going to be drafting now because I do like baseball. I'm in baseball mode now, but I'll draft, let's say those underdog best ball leagues where first place overall gets like $2 million, those massive tournaments called Best
Yeah.
Ball Mania. I'll do that in, let's say, July or August to try to get those, because if you draft a little earlier and you're ahead of the market on a player, you feel like the player is going to move up in in draft position, you
Mhm.
could get them at a cheaper price if you draft earlier. Like for example, last season, if you drafted early, you could have got Saquon Barkley in the early third round. When it was end of August, he would go early second round. So it just, if you're in
Right.
those large field tournaments, that really puts you at an advantage. But I like at the end best. That's my preference too,
At the end. What do you like,
for sure.
Spartan? You like the
Like,
end?
yeah,
As late as possible. I actually got into an argument on Twitter this week. I suggested the NFL moves the season back a week, just line it up with Labor Day, and some people are like, "You can't do that to me because that's my weekend of draft for fantasy." So I had to delete that tweet, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what always happens to me because my birthday is September 3rd. So sometimes it falls on Labor Day, but it's
Yeah.
always on somebody's draft, right? So it's like, I hate to have to auto draft, but I'll be wasted doing my team. Maybe that's smart. Maybe that's the key since I won the
There you go.
bracket.
You
It
need
just
the Tito's.
Yeah, I need the Tito's. Maybe just do this drunk going forward this year. And, we will see what happens. Well, Frank, we thank you so much. Let's stay in touch.
thank you.
Everybody, please follow Frank. He is, whether you are a fantasy player or not, I know we didn't even get into all the betting that he does. So we're going to have him back on anyway. But thank you so much. We really appreciate
you.
it. We appreciate you guys
Yeah,
always
thank you all.
supporting us so much. Even if fantasy is not your thing, you're still here with us, spending an hour. We appreciate it. Don't forget, guys, Monday nights, New York Giants Rush, 8:00. We were all off this past week, but we are back this week. Wednesday nights, Rush Hour, 7:00. The Draft Show with Truth and Spartan is
That's right.
Thursdays, and I will be on tomorrow. We're going to
We're
talk
doing
about my
receivers,
team.
guys. We're getting to the position everybody wants to talk about.
And they're bringing the diva on for the diva wide receiver position. So I think this is very, very, very fitting. We have our ginormous rush show, draft show at the end of the month. So everybody stay tuned for that. We have some amazing content coming out. We have some more contests coming up for you guys. So stay tuned for that. The newest contest that we are doing, we have 2 tickets that we are giving away here on Rush Hour for the Giants draft party, and it is going to our 1,000th subscriber on YouTube. So if you're here on YouTube, you don't subscribe to us, hit the subscribe button. And if you are the 1,000th subscriber, you will win the tickets to the draft party on, I think it's April 27th, but we'll double check that for you guys. So make sure you subscribe. And that is it, guys. We are Two-Toe. You're late, but thank you for the last minute support.
Yes.
But we are out, and we will see you guys next week. Is a great debate show for Rush Hour. Should Eli Manning be a Hall of Famer? Brady versus Manning. Which state has the best pizza? I've got a bunch of people lined up for the great debate show. So if you want to come on, shoot me a DM, shoot anybody on the Rush team a DM, and we will get you scheduled for your segment. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you
Have
all.
a great week. I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Bye.